The situation unfolding in southern Lebanon is gradually becoming one of the most difficult security challenges Israel has faced in recent years. What was initially presented as a limited operation designed to create additional security depth near the northern border has increasingly evolved into a prolonged and extremely expensive campaign that now affects not only the military balance along the border region, but also Israel's broader economic and political stability. Dear viewers, you are on the channel InfoVector. With you is Daniel Brooks, and today, we are going to examine why the concept of overwhelming technological superiority has encountered serious limitations in the mountains of southern Lebanon, how underground infrastructure has fundamentally reshaped the operational environment, and why even some of the most advanced defensive systems in the world are beginning to face unexpected pressure. We will also look at the growing role of underground networks, anti-armor systems, drone warfare, logistics strain, and the economic consequences that are now becoming impossible to ignore. Operationally, the situation in southern Lebanon remains extremely complicated. On paper, Israeli forces continue to maintain positions in sectors extending roughly 10 to 15 kilometers beyond the border area. But in reality, this is not a stable line of control. It is a fragmented and constantly shifting zone of pressure where activity continues almost continuously. Israeli planners initially expected that large-scale air operations combined with the deployment of several divisions would force Hezbollah units to pull back north of the Litani River. Yet by late spring, it became increasingly clear that events were unfolding very differently from those early expectations. Instead of collapsing under sustained aerial pressure, Hezbollah appears to have adapted the battlefield into an environment where many of Israel's traditional advantages become significantly less effective. One of the central reasons is geography itself. Southern Lebanon is not open desert terrain. It is a dense and highly irregular landscape filled with hills, rocky formations, forests, terraces, and concealed routes. Under these conditions, the movement of heavy armor becomes extremely difficult. Tanks and armored vehicles are forced into narrow corridors and predictable road systems, dramatically increasing vulnerability to coordinated anti-armor activity from concealed positions. Another major surprise has been the organizational structure Hezbollah has developed over the past 2 decades. Israeli assessments reportedly assumed that the removal of senior leadership figures in previous years would significantly weaken coordination across the network. But the operational reality now suggests something very different. The organization appears to have transitioned toward a highly decentralized structure. Entire villages and sectors function almost like autonomous operational cells with their own communication systems, local command structures, supply reserves, and tactical flexibility. Even after Israeli units move through a sector, activity frequently resumes behind advancing formations. Mobile teams continue appearing in areas that were previously considered secured, placing growing pressure on logistics routes, supply convoys, and temporary command positions. This has gradually transformed rear area protection into one of the most resource-intensive aspects of the operation. At the same time, questions are increasingly being raised about the overall effectiveness of large-scale aerial operations. Despite extensive air activity and the use of heavy bunker-penetrating munitions, Hezbollah's operational infrastructure has not been fully neutralized. The main reason appears to lie underground. Analysts now describe the tunnel system not as isolated underground passages, but as a deeply layered infrastructure network that has been developed over many years. Upper levels are often used as decoys, storage areas, or secondary facilities, exactly the kinds of targets most visible to satellite reconnaissance and aerial surveillance. But deeper levels reportedly contain command centers, protected transit routes, communication hubs, and hardened underground sections capable of surviving extremely intense bombardment. The geology of southern Lebanon adds another layer of complexity. Unlike softer terrain elsewhere in the region, much of southern Lebanon consists of dense limestone formations that naturally reinforce underground structures. As a result, even modern bunker-penetrating systems often struggle to fully disable deeply buried facilities. Operations aimed at clearing a single underground node can reportedly take days, while activity in neighboring sectors continues almost uninterrupted. One of the most concerning developments has been the repeated appearance of mobile units emerging after Israeli formations have already moved forward. Using concealed exits, small teams reportedly reappear in previously cleared areas and begin targeting logistics points, communications routes, and temporary rear positions. This forces Israeli commanders to dedicate a substantial portion of manpower not to forward operations, but to protecting supply and transport corridors. According to several military observers, the psychological impact of this constant uncertainty may be just as significant as the physical battlefield itself. Even advanced robotics and reconnaissance drones have struggled to fully map or neutralize the underground network. The tunnel systems are believed to contain multiple defensive layers, surveillance systems, traps, and protected access points. In many ways, southern Lebanon is now being viewed as a model of a new type of underground conflict environment, one where preparation, concealment, and distributed infrastructure can partially offset traditional military asymmetry. But underground networks are only part of the challenge. On the surface, armored units have been facing extremely dense anti-armor pressure. The Merkava tank, long considered one of the most protected armored platforms in the world, is now operating in an environment saturated with mobile anti-tank systems. One of the defining tactical features of the current phase has been the widespread use of synchronized launches. Instead of isolated engagements, multiple anti-armor systems are often activated against a single target from several directions nearly simultaneously. Under those conditions, even sophisticated active protection systems begin approaching the limits of their reaction cycles. Additional complications have emerged from the growing use of top-attack systems designed to target the upper portions of armored vehicles. Analysts note that a substantial share of recent armor damage appears linked to strikes against upper sections traditionally viewed as more difficult to protect. At the same time, remotely operated launch systems are reportedly becoming more common. Operators remain inside protected positions while launch platforms are placed separately, making rapid response and counterfire significantly more difficult. All of this contributes to a growing economic imbalance. Modern armored systems, active protection suites, and advanced vehicles cost dramatically more than the systems being used against them. This creates a prolonged resource competition where maintaining operational readiness becomes increasingly expensive over time. Drones have also become central to the battlefield. By this stage of the conflict, Hezbollah appears to have significantly expanded the use of small unmanned aerial systems. These include reconnaissance drones, coordination platforms, and electronic disruption systems. The terrain of southern Lebanon creates ideal operating conditions for low-altitude drone activity. Using valleys, riverbeds, and natural terrain masking, small drones often appear within detection range only moments before reaching their intended area. That dramatically reduces reaction time for air defense systems. The challenge becomes even greater during layered launches. Large numbers of inexpensive decoy drones are reportedly used first in order to overload radar systems and force the expenditure of costly interceptors. Only afterward do more capable systems begin their main operational tasks. As a result, Israeli defensive systems are increasingly being forced to operate under sustained saturation conditions. Electronic warfare has become another growing concern. Certain unmanned systems are reportedly being used not only for reconnaissance, but also for creating interference that affects observation systems and targeting coordination. This complicates real-time battlefield awareness and reduces the effectiveness of rapid operational response. Drones are also becoming integrated into broader battlefield coordination networks. A reconnaissance platform identifies vehicle movement, transfers coordinates, and anti-armor systems engage almost immediately afterward. This creates a highly compressed operational cycle where relatively inexpensive systems can generate significant pressure even against technologically advanced forces. Yet perhaps the most serious consequences are now appearing inside Israel itself. The economic burden continues to rise. According to multiple estimates, the daily financial cost of sustaining the current operational tempo has reached extremely high levels. This includes not only military expenditures, but also the long-term mobilization of reserve personnel. The cumulative effect is placing increasing pressure on state finances. Northern Israel remains under particularly heavy strain. Large numbers of residents still have not returned to border communities. Ongoing instability and continued security concerns have left many families in temporary housing arrangements. Agriculture, logistics networks, and small businesses in the north continue experiencing serious disruption. Meanwhile, Israel's technology sector is also beginning to feel the effects of prolonged mobilization. Thousands of engineers, programmers, and highly skilled specialists remain attached to reserve formations, impacting both productivity and investment confidence. The longer the operation continues, the more internal political and social pressure appears to build. Questions are increasingly being asked about long-term strategy and whether a purely military solution to the current situation even exists. At this stage, analysts generally discuss three broad scenarios. The first involves maintaining the current security zone in southern Lebanon. But this path would likely require continued massive expenditures alongside ongoing exposure of logistics and infrastructure to persistent pressure. The second scenario involves expanding operations farther north. However, that option carries the risk of a significantly wider regional crisis while further stretching already vulnerable supply systems. The third scenario centers on some form of internationally mediated political arrangement. Yet many observers inside Israel believe such an outcome would be politically difficult and potentially viewed domestically as a strategic setback. The broader conclusion emerging from this conflict is increasingly difficult to ignore. Technological superiority alone no longer guarantees rapid strategic outcomes. Southern Lebanon is gradually becoming a case study in a new style of modern conflict, one shaped by distributed networks, underground infrastructure, drone saturation, decentralized command systems, and long-term resource pressure. And perhaps most importantly, the future direction of this situation may ultimately depend not only on military capability, but on whether an entirely new regional security framework can eventually emerge. What do you think? Can a long-term solution still be achieved primarily through military means, or is the region moving toward a completely different phase of strategic balance? This was Daniel Brooks. See you in the next Analytical Reviews.